Diogo Jota dying at the age of 28 is quite possibly the saddest thing that I've ever known in football. Of course, there have been football tragedies over the years, but nothing has ever felt as poignant as this. I've never known a footballer at the peak of his powers, doing the business for the champions of England, winning international silverware, to suddenly, at the age of 28, be cruelly snatched from life. You think about what's been going on in his personal life. You think about what's been going on in his professional life. And you see the images of him on his wedding day. The fact that he died with his brother, all you can do is think of his mother. Like, how must his mother be feeling at this time? I mean, there really are no words that can come close to expressing the pain that they must be feeling. I mean, I was reading some of the tributes that were left at Anfield. I mean, and they break your heart. Like, they really do. I mean, one of them, it just zoomed in on it and it said no words. And you're like, yeah, there actually are no words. There's no words that even come close to helping us understand the cruel nature of this actually happening. I mean, I read Andy Robertson's tribute on Instagram, and it's about as close to being choked as I think I have ever been. He spoke so passionately, so poignantly, so honestly, so openly, but crucially, he just spoke so relatably. He was speaking as a friend. He was speaking at the loss of a mate. The loss of a mate who he was at Cheltenham with just a few months ago. The loss of a mate who he watched the darts with, watched the snooker with, played computer games with. Like, it was just his mate. And anybody that was at Cheltenham recently will have been there with a friend. And all of a sudden, it's just become so poignant and so stark. Like Diogo Jota, those pictures of his wedding day, it's about as painful as it can be, because he is a footballer who's obviously at the peak of his powers. He's just reached the zenith of the game. The zenith of the game in this country. He's won the league for the first time in front of fans at Anfield in the Premier League era. The images of him dancing with the scarf tied round his head will live long in the memory. And he's obviously achieved the zenith of football with his nation as well, winning the conference, the Nations League. And then, all of a sudden, it's gone. And we're talking here about the professional achievements. And actually, the jewel in the crown wasn't either of the things that we just discussed. The greatest day of his year was neither of the things that we've just discussed. Like, he married his childhood sweetheart. The biggest prize of all would have been marrying his childhood sweetheart. They've been together since they were kids. 2012 they got together. And they've got married. They've got 3 children. And in a Catholic church in Porto, in the Portuguese city where they fell for each other as teenagers, they tied the knot 10 days ago. I mean, for him to now be dead, I mean, it's just a tragedy beyond comprehension. Like, it's just honestly one of the saddest things that I think I've ever known in sport. I mean, you know, like that eternal flame that burns at Anfield. I mean, it will burn a tiny bit brighter now, won't it? Because this story will echo in the folklore of Liverpool forever, and it's just so sad. Like, it's a city, and it's certainly a football club that has so much glory, so much to its name, such a proud British institution of sport, and yet it seems to perennially have this shadow of sadness hanging over it. I mean, that sadness definitely makes the city stronger. It's a robust city, a resolute people, and you just know that the Liverpool fans are going to sing Diogo Jota's name proudly. And that song, in fact, one of the tributes that I saw, it actually just said, like on a bouquet of flowers, it just said something along the lines of, "Oh, he wears the number 20." And you're just like, that's so poignant, isn't it? Like, you will not go to Anfield. I don't think anybody who will ever go to Anfield, ever again in fact, will ever go there and not hear that song sung proudly, loudly, with passion. I mean, if you do read, and I don't even necessarily recommend it because it will break your heart, but if you read the tributes that are left on some of those floral memorials, I mean, one of them just says, You are not alone. And another one said, you are a champion forever. And you think, my God, this is like heartbreaking. And then you just have to think of him away from being an athlete at the peak of his powers, a footballer who is, a sensational champion of Liverpool. You have to think of him away from that. And you suddenly start thinking of him as a son. His parents, they've lost 2 of their sons, his wife and their 3 children. It just beggars belief. I mean, it's unfathomable. And then you start thinking of his moments in a Liverpool shirt. You think about some of his greatest moments. I mean, that hat-trick that he scored against Atalanta is one that I think will always live in the memory of Liverpool fans. Obviously, the goal against Arsenal took his side to the League Cup final, didn't it? And the one that will always stay with me is, do you remember when Richarlison scored and started doing the chicken in front of the travelling fans? And then they went right up the other end and Jota immediately scored. I mean, he had that ability, didn't he? That knack of scoring, like incredible goals, big goals when you most need it. I think Andy Robertson said in an interview, didn't he, that he could have 10 men round him and he'd still somehow manage to poke the ball into the far corner of the net. And I mean, he really did that. And then you think about his contribution to the title campaign. Like, he scored the opening goal of Arne Slot's tenure, didn't he? Opened the scoring at Ipswich. And that set the ball rolling. That was part of it. You think about that moment, I think it was against Forest, which actually felt like a defining moment in the league title race. They brought on Harvey Elliott and Diogo Jota, and both Harvey Elliott assisted with his first touch and Jota scored with his first touch. I mean, those moments, they feel like sort of quintessential Jota goals. And that's what he was capable of doing. It really is unbelievable. And I've just never, ever known anything like this. I saw a moment that he had actually with the father of one of the girls that died at Southport. The father ran the marathon, and Jota sponsored him and sent him a video message. And the father of that little girl said that helped him get through. Like, those little things. Like, everybody that speaks about knowing him, obviously I'd never met him, but everybody that speaks about knowing him speaks about him in such a positive way. I heard Danny Murphy on the radio yesterday talking about him. Obviously, Danny Murphy would still have a lot of friends at Liverpool. He'd know a lot of people at Liverpool. And he admitted that he'd never met him either, but he said that at Liverpool, he's seen as being so popular with all the staff at the club. He really is seen as being like a bright light and somebody that is ever popular. Seen as being really normal as well. I think Jamie Carragher wrote in his article in the Telegraph that you'd see him just sort of riding his bike in a tracksuit, like, no flashy clothes, just riding his bike around the local area they live. I think it's called Crosby. But to go out of his way to make contact with that father, it's about as yeah. So then I guess it becomes a question of what happens next. And I've seen a lot of talk about retiring the jersey, and I guess I'll give my thought on it. Do you retire the shirt? Does retiring the Liverpool shirt make sense? And to be honest, I think the right answer is the answer that Liverpool decide, that Diogo Jota's family decide. That will be the right answer. I think the general consensus is that it would be a good idea, but I have one reason as to why it's not. I think that this shirt will now be steeped in history, and it could be an inspiration to work and maybe wear the shirt of Diogo Jota. These shirts that are etched in folklore, these numbers that are etched in football folklore, this isn't a club issue. This transcends club rivalry or anything, as the entire issue does, obviously. But, for example, the Man United number 7. It's an aspirational number for a reason. And, somebody, young Portuguese kid, could maybe aspire to somehow lead the line for Liverpool and inherit this shirt. And if you retire the number, maybe that isn't a possibility. But yeah, I mean, in terms of that, it all feels fairly insignificant compared to what has happened. And it's in these moments where you realise that football, the game that we love, the rivalry, the tribalism, the hatred that goes with football, you suddenly realise that football is actually, and I think this quote summarises football so perfectly, it's the most important thing in our lives. It's the most important thing that you will ever do. Nothing means more than football on the list of all the things that don't matter. So it's top of the list of everything that actually doesn't matter. Because obviously this is, I mean, it's just cruel, unconscionable. And when you see the images of his wife, his baby, who can't be much older than my baby, in his arms at a wedding wearing a tiara, it's hateful. You just have to send love to everybody connected with the Jotas and pray that they can get through this.